Welcome to the Bucher and Friends podcast. Here is your host.
Let's send it over to Rick Bucher.
Rick Bucher.
Welcome to another episode of Bucher and Friends, part of the United WeCast Network. I'm Rick Bucher. You can read my stuff on Bleacher Report. You can find me on Twitter at Rick Bucher. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Bucher Friends. And if you enjoy the show, please drop us a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Screenshot your review and tweet it to us at Bucher Friends, and you'll be entered for a chance to win some swag from Ryan Hollins, Will Blackman, or myself. Or maybe even our next guest, Jared Dudley. I don't know if he's going to throw anything. I know he gives away tickets. I know he's a man of the people. Brooklyn Nets veteran forward. Jared Dudley is kind enough to join us on the show today. And Jared, first of all, thank you for taking the time. And I hope that you are on the mend because of the hamstring that has you out right now.
Yeah, man. Big win for us last night. Excited. You know, obviously, yeah, I'm down and out for right now for a little bit, but hey, you can still be a fan and a good teammate. And watching the game here in New York, watching them, man, that was incredible, man. To see James Harden, what the performance he had, and for us, it's really been the theme of us all year, the resilience we have. Yeah. Up 20, down 20. We've always kept it a close game, always give ourselves a shot. Our depth is crucial. We're 15 deep, and mostly no team in the NBA can say that. When I say how deep we are, our 15th guy, the drop-off between a starter and the 15th guy is not as big as drop-off as on most teams in the NBA.
Right. And I was curious. You've been with a few teams. Bobcats, started out with the Bobcats, the Suns, 2 runs with the Suns, the Clippers, Bucks, Wizards, and now the Nets. Is there a team, is there a circumstance that you can relate what this team is about or what this team has to what you've experienced before?
A little bit of Milwaukee. I would say Milwaukee, before I got there, they were the worst team in the NBA, worse than Philly. And Philly was trying to lose at this time. This is when Sam Hinkie was their GM, and they were trying to cue it. And Milwaukee was worse. I got there along with Zaza, another leader. Giannis was I was starting over Giannis. Chris Middleton was getting DMP the first 7-8 games of the year. Brandon Knight was our main scorer. Jabari was number 2 pick. And we were a good defensive team, a better defensive team than we are here in Brooklyn. Brooklyn, obviously, we have more firepower, but not having high expectations, a team that just clicked, got along, a coach that came and hit the right buttons. Jason Kidd that year, I think it was a 15, 17 win turnaround, I believe so in that. Kenny Atkinson, us going through our little 7-8 game losing streak, making adjustments, turning it around. And so a lot of similar variables in that season compared to this season we're having now.
That is, by the way, a trivia question for sure. Who's the last person to start over Giannis Antetokounmpo? That's going right to the top of the list. Tell me a little bit. There's a number of things I want to get into with this team, but tell me a little bit, since you mentioned Kenny Atkinson. A lot of people didn't really know anything about him. I saw him as an assistant. I mean, I'll tell you what, I was always impressed because if you went early to a game and you saw a team working out, the dude was more lathered than any of the players that he was warming up. He went at it like he was either getting ready to play or had just come from the Y. Right. Give me a sense of what has made him, and I love his demeanor too. He's on top of everything, but there's a composure there, a poise that really impresses me. What has he impressed you with?
Yeah, you hit the nail. For one, his demeanor, but I would say accountability. I mean, I've been in this business now here. It's my 12th year. Been through a lot of coaches. It's easy for the Doc Rivers and the Larry Browns to have accountability because they've won championship. Both of them have. They've been around on the block, players, coaching. And so most coaches don't hold everyone accountable. And I saw that from the beginning. I saw him getting after assistant coaches, ball boys, of not having a ball ready in practice when someone turned it over, getting on, D'Angelo Russell, to myself, to the, Kenneth Faried, all the and holding us accountable in the film room. And I remember many different teams I've been on where we see a star player or a really, really good player and film mess up and a coach doesn't say anything. Kenny is teaching every day for us to get better. Now, a lot of coaches say that, but he goes that by, for one, by the film, 2, by the court development. It's huge. The player development is huge here. And as you can see, the players they've been in the system 3-4 years, they've all gotten better. And you can see why, because of what they do of the 3-on-3s before practice, after practice, of how to try to improve people when they're watching film. So his demeanor, his accountability, and his humbleness. And I say humbleness is because he takes advice. We've had meetings with him before as players and as coaches, and giving him thought and input, and never thinking that he's too big or not know-it-all. He then will listen to the feedback and sometimes throw players and throw different coaches bones, which not saying it's just my way or the only way.
That is impressive. That sounds very Popovich-like, to be honest with you. And I don't know how many people would relate it to him, but Pop takes a lot of input and doesn't make it about him. He can be surly and curmudgeonly with reporters and all that, but it's not who he is as a coach.
It makes sense, and you could see that, and you can see obviously with his background in Atlanta, that coach coming from San Antonio has a little similarities, and you see how him and Sean Marks have got along, and I just think that he's a player's guy. He likes the grind, getting into it, getting after it, and being the underdog. I don't really know him personally, but I bet you he was the underdog. No one thought he'd be a head coach or how he was a player if he was a point guard and getting after people. And you can see that's his demeanor now as a coach.
Right. By the way, so we're recording this after the Nets come back on the Houston Rockets, win in overtime, 145-142, which pushed them to an even 500 record, which in the Eastern Conference means that you're the 6th seed as of right now. And the fact that the Nets are in the playoff picture in itself because of what the expectations were coming into the year. And I relate this, Jared, to when I was around the Warriors. I actually worked as their sideline reporter for a couple years. And one of those years was when Mark Jackson came in and Jared Jack came in and a number of the veterans. And they had, I think they were rated, ESPN had them ranked 10th or 11th in the Western Conference. And a couple of the vets, Jermaine O'Neal, Jared Jack, Carl Landry, they were like, we're not here to be 10th or 11th. Like, we're here to win. We're here to, and it was something that really fired up the younger talent, Steph, Clay, etc. What was it that brought this Nets team together? When did you guys begin to believe?
I think after the 8-game losing streak, we had a players-only film session. People always say, the players-only meeting. Now, we didn't have a meeting and go over, hey, everyone, air out your laundry. It was a film session of how we were losing all these close games. We were up 20, up 8 with a minute to go. And so we were just finding ways to lose, and it was the little things, and it was just, led by me and Damari as being, one of the, now we don't have captains, but one of the, obviously we've been in the league with the most experience with the vets leading it, talking and calling players out, players calling, us taking initiative of how to play and winning plays. It's like the box outs or the extra pass and listening to other players of seeing what they're seeing out on the floor, why they're not doing these little things. And so credit that to the next night after losing 8-game losing streak. You play the Toronto Raptors, had the best record in the NBA. You win a close game, I think by 2 or 3 at the buzzer that game. And from that we went on a 7-game winning streak. So I credit that loss. I credit Kenny Atkinson, our head coach, where I think after that we know there was a meeting with him and him discussing stuff. And I thought that he adapted. I think that the coaching staff adapted of how to play guys, when to play guys, who deserves playing time, this and this. And so as an organization, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Yeah, people want to win. You have first-round picks. You guys got guys in the last year of the deal. What guys you want in at the end of the game? And I think the coaching staff kind of figured out a good balance of each game by game of who should be at the end. And sometimes it might be your best player be out. He's playing bad. And so it's hard to do that as an organization, but I think they've done as you saw last night, D'Angelo Russell didn't play the last crunch time, and Spencer was it, and Joe Harris was out there. And that's a tough decision to make because D'Angelo, for most of the year has been our best player since Harris has been hurt. But in that game, if a player doesn't have it, the willing for a coach to be able to have the guts to do that is you could see that that's something that wasn't happening early in the year and to go along with the players making the right adjustments.
Yeah, one of those is, speaking of D'Angelo, and I do want to get your take on him because he obviously came from the Lakers as damaged goods because of a number of things that transpired there. And when you guys, I think it was it at New Orleans where you lost, where Solomon Hill came into the huddle? Was that the game?
Yeah, that was a game. Yeah, and he had a bad turnover at the end. The no-look pass.
He tried to. You guys are killing the clock, and he tries to throw a no-look.
Yeah.
I was like, come on.
For sure.
He obviously, I've been impressed. You know, I've watched enough. I mean, there's still that young kid in him at times, but he's proved he can play. And I wasn't so sure that he was going to put it together to be able to play. What's been your impression of him? How have you seen him grow since you've been around him?
Yeah, I think you got to look at the situation. He came in. I mean, how many kids that are top 1 to 3, 4 pick can go into the L.A. Lakers? Yeah. Kobe's farewell. Byron Scott, military coach, who doesn't like young players, how that is, and succeed. There are some. There's a couple guys that could do that. Yeah, but most can't. And I think that his immaturity at that time played a huge factor. I think he had to grow up super fast, which is tough to do, and not play and don't know when to play. And obviously he's Kobe and this and this. And so what I've noticed for having not judging a player, seeing this, is his willingness to listen. And that's tough because a lot of these players, I played on young teams across the board, and you give them a lot of playing time, and they want to figure out while they're making mistakes. And I try to tell them, listen here, you have to correct those within the game. We don't have time for you, hey, the next game or the game after, let's watch film, let's get better. Yeah, that could happen. But, hey, if you're turning the ball over 3-4 in the quarter, hey, we got to minimize it. No more turnovers now in the next 3 quarters. You got to lock in. And so for him, the question, him asking me, hey, why do you think I'm turning the ball over? And then sometimes I say, you're playing too slow. When you come off that pick and roll, you're trying to always hold the ball, do extra couple dribbles a la Chris Paul. Sometimes, you're not being a superior athlete. That ball's like, you got to pop that ball. You got to make the read faster. You got to explode, even though he's not an explosive athlete. So his willingness to listen, he's a better scorer and shooter than I think people get credit. Mid-range is phenomenal. Great catch and shoot and off the dribble shooter. He's a good passer, but sometimes questionable decision making. Mm-hmm. And so that comes through playing and watching film. So his willingness to take criticism, to have it, and then yet to cheer his teammates on when he's not in. Because as you said, like from him and Spencer and Shabazz, yes, you would put D'Angelo up there, but the drop off's not huge. Now he's a better player, and so Shabazz can get hot. And so for him to be a great teammate and see what he is and lead, and him to take on a bigger role with Karis, that has definitely impressed me the most.
Well, what impressed me, I ran into you guys in Chicago. I was in your locker room, and I was impressed just by the vibe. There was a good vibe among those young guys, among the young guys supporting each other. And you've probably seen this in your time too, where a lot of times you get a bunch of young guys together. They're crabs in a bucket. Everybody wants to prove who they are, and sometimes they can get in the way of how the team performs. And did you guys have to work through that at all? Was that part of coming out of the early losing, or has this team always had a collective supportive vibe?
It's always had a collective supportive vibe. I think sometimes there probably was a little frustration of Kenny yanking this person for that person, wanting to be in the fourth quarter. And that's why you have to pay vets. And that's why good vets have to be on there, is because now we have to control a locker room. We control on the bus, the conversations on the plane. And I told D'Angelo, I said, D'Angelo, listen here, this is a business about winning games. And so my coaching staff is trying to figure you out and trying to push you and try to have discipline, because it's accountability. Mm-hmm. So when you're taking 3 or 4 bad shots, and Karis now steps up to the plate like, oh, wow, where did this guy come from? His development. And so now he's playing more minutes, and Spencer has it going like, hey, listen, or vice versa, Spencer, hey, listen here, you come off the game, you can't come and be cool. You can't come and shoot, step back 31st, your first 3 shots and expect to be out there. No, like we don't have that margin of error and that margin of room to be able to do that. So I think that the vibe is when you get into the buses and the planes and you're letting them know and you're talking to them and they see, oh, you know what? Now we go and we start winning. See, listen here, it's a team and we all going to get the accolades. And so most teams that go through that, that you say, are young teams that all young guys are playing. They don't play any vets, and the vets are just in the locker room trying to basically make everyone get along. But when you play the vets, you play the Ed Davis, the DeMarre Carrolls, myself, even it's 15, 17 minutes, and we're not there for the contracts. We're playing the right way, and they see it, and they see, hey, why is this guy not selfish? And they tell you their stories, our stories of how we've gotten paid. You're like, oh, okay, listen here, okay, well, maybe there is a different way.
Yeah, that's what I've appreciated is that Kenny has used you and the vets in key situations. It's not an Atlanta situation where I see them subbing out Jeremy Lin and bringing in Trae Young. And no offense to Trae Young, but I'm like, oh, they're not trying to win this game because Jeremy's is operating, right? and they bring Trae in for the last 4 or 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, I know where this might go.
Right.
He hasn't done that. I mean, clearly the Nets aren't in tank mode, which I appreciate. Maybe you can speak to this. I just had Chris Kaman on the show as well, and he was griping about Philadelphia. He doesn't understand. Or we talked about the Blazers, people saying, hey, they should blow it up and start over. And I get in small markets that sometimes you have to take that approach, but and maybe for a year you play the young guys, I can see that, but I'm just not a believer in this. We're going to lose for basically the Philadelphia process. I believe that it creates a mindset and a stigma with the team that is really hard to get rid of.
I'm 100% with you. I do agree. There's certain situations that it's okay, but let's just look at the small markets. You have to hit on your draft picks, and sometimes that draft pick, it could be a Giannis. What was Giannis, 12, 13? He wasn't top 5, top 7. The Phoenix Suns, before you get Devin Booker, he wasn't top 5, top 10. And so when you look at this, and so when I was there in Phoenix, understandably, they had Booker. They drafted Bender and Marquise Chris. That's 4 and 8. They didn't hit on one of those guys. Both of them are not playing now. You did Josh Jackson at 3 or 4. Okay, now you got Josh. And so now we have all these young guys. They want to play them to get experience. But how much better can a young guy get if you play all young guys together? Like, I just don't understand. They don't know how to play NBA basketball. So you have to have at least 2 to 3 vets out there at a time to know the nuance of the NBA game. So if you have someone like, D'Angelo Russell and Karis LeVert out there, okay, you need a DeMarre Carroll. You're going to need me out there, Ed Davis at times, to know the screen, when to come off it, when to shoot, when to hold the ball, when not to throw the ball out of bounds, when to go for 2 for 1. Listen, when to foul a guy. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm with you. And then a losing culture, bad habits. And then also too, when you come to like how your practice schedule, when you're on bad teams, they practice all the time. They don't know how to take care of their body. Like when you're on teams that do it the right way, when you win, you're in a better mood. Hey, recovery day. Hey, take this day off. Hey, come in just for shooting. The dog days of bad teams, because I've been on both sides, is not fun. And so that's why you have to have good vets around to keep the good habits and let them know there's brighter days. And I don't see it. That's why the Miami, Pat Riley's approach, you don't see him tanking. And so what you're trying to do is hold the culture. Hopefully they hit on one draft pick between 15 to 20, a Kyle Kuzma, and then a free agent says, you know what, they're one piece away.
Yep. Well said. And I believe the game has changed a little bit too, in that the depth and the versatility of your roster. I mean, you're always going to need, as Ryan Hollins likes to say, an alien. You need that one guy who's an alien. But your depth and the flexibility of your roster can take you a long way. And who knows? You can kind of find yourself suddenly playing for a championship. And okay, so I don't want to belabor this, but losing 4 or 5 years thinking, okay, we're building a team that's going to be a dynasty for 4 or 5 years. It's such a pie in the sky approach that's not realistic. Very quickly, I think that you mentioned D'Angelo Russell and what he went through, with the Kobe graduation, Kobe retirement year. Kobe wasn't. This is the thing that kind of bothered me about the narrative that everybody had about Kobe teaching that team and being frustrated about that team, and they on the cameras would see him during games talking to somebody, and I'm like, he wasn't around for practice. Like, he was there for the games, but they didn't see Kobe. They didn't see the Kobe that other people saw working. He was spending all his time on his own, just trying to get his body to the point where he could play. And I think there was a real disconnect there. Like, D'Angelo didn't get to see what Kobe did to make Kobe great.
For sure. And then pick his brain. Yep. Because now the conversation of an all-time great, the conversation he's going to have with a 19-year-old who's playing, who's in and out, not playing, who's immature, and he's on his last year.
Yeah.
I mean, some people don't have that in them to, you know what? Let me pass on my knowledge. Right? I mean, what Grant Hill did to me, I don't know this from Kobe, but I'm just going by the stuff that I heard, the stories I've heard from D'Angelo about Kobe, and they were just watching him. He didn't have that many conversations, like you would think. Like I'm trying to think, my second, third year, the conversations I had with Grant Hill and Steve Nash, like just to learn. There's a reason why I played 12 years in the NBA. Those buses and plane rides of how they took care of their body, the business, the politics, the ins and outs, and how you're supposed to conduct yourself. Like, those are invaluable. And so someone like myself to be able to pass that on. So you're correct where, like, they didn't see that. I mean, they might kind of caught a practice every blue moon, but like, he was on his last leg.
Yep.
That was the whole show was about Kobe. It wasn't about the team.
Speaking of bodies, what's up with Paul Pierce? Like, body shaming you, or like, what was that? I don't even know. Did you guys have a beef previously? What's he doing?
No. I don't have no beef with Paul Pierce. I mean, every time I've seen him, it's been fun. Hey, listen here. Me and Paul Pierce have the same body type. I guarantee you right now, if Paul Pierce got on the scale and I got on the scale, he'd be bigger than me. Now he's in retirement. I understand that. But when he played for Boston and he played for that, it's the same thing what I am right now, or I was back in Phoenix when I used to play, stuff like that, or Milwaukee or that, stuff like that. We both were born with natural cuts, body, athleticism. Now, he's more of an athlete than I am, obviously a way better player, Hall of Famer and stuff like that, but you know how it is. When you're a broadcaster, teens, you got to try to be funny. He's not a naturally funny guy, but it was a funny comment. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
No problem with Paul Pierce.
I get that. By the way, I wonder how you feel, because you clearly have a future in this if you want it in your post-playing days to do whatever it is that you want to do, but be in broadcasting or speaking. But and maybe this is just from my end of things, but it has become, the market, in my opinion, has become flooded with players, and the conversation isn't as heightened or enlightened as I'd like it to be. Now, that may be the journalist in me, that may be the reporter writer in me, but I wish there was a balance. Honestly, I mean, maybe it's self-serving, but I wish there was still more of me's combined with players so that you have that back and forth. Because I sometimes feel like the player thing becomes like you have guys like Paul Pierce who aren't funny, who are trying to be funny, and it takes a left turn.
You have to have that's what makes TNT the best. You have Ernie.
Yep.
What Ernie does, Ernie is the orchestra. He controls the whole show. He lets them go on their rants. He brings it back together. He has enlightening questions that people at home would think, I want to know that. I want to know the answer to that. And he lets Shaq and them go after it. And so that's where ESPN and people are trying to get to. It's not as organic.
Right.
It's not as this. And then also too is when you do with players, they feel like there's a code. Oh, I can't unveil this. They'll give you a story of how it is in the past, but like they're not like if you listen to Shannon Sharp and how he's done it, like he's so real authentic. He doesn't care. And so most NBA players, because they still hang out with each other, there's a sense of, let's not step on the toes. Let's not do this. And so the only person you really see really do that is Charles. You know what I mean? Charles is really the one, like, he doesn't really care. He does have his feels. And so I'm with you. I think it has to be less scripted, more organic, more original, and enlightening of why. You know, when you're talking about a game and you're dissecting these players, their weaknesses and strengths, and why they are, and these coaches, and keep it and be honest. And I think that people will like that, and it's tough to have that because the best players in the world or the best people that are now doing the commentating might not be best suited to be able to do that, and that's where the balance has to happen.
Yeah, 100. I agree 100%. It's not a criticism, but I look at it the same way when we talk about teams and we talk about general managers, and I've had the opportunity to talk with some teams about this, in that you're asking like a former player or somebody who's never had to manage people. Like, they may know the game and they may be great talent evaluators and they understand how a team works, but have they ever had to communicate with the business side? And have they ever had to like bring together, maybe their role on the team wasn't necessarily to bring the team together or to manage up as well as down. It's a special...
And that's why usually those aren't the star players, because usually star players were naturally gifted.
Yes.
Yeah, they worked. Yeah, they were hard workers. But it's like, hey, it's the guy that was the role player that had to make sure the locker room was good, and the guy who had to work and had to stay after and had to, do the little different things that those guys that you see the Sean Marks. It's a perfect example.
Right.
And, the overseas connection. Who's willing to go overseas and scout?
Yep.
Who's willing to take a bus ride?
Who can without everybody focusing on them in the gym?
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. That's another added. Hey, you hit everything that you hit the nail right on the head and stuff like that. And that's why it's difficult. And so that will be something for me. Like, do I want to be a GM?
Yeah.
Possibly. Do I want to be a head coach? Or do I want to be an analyst? So those three things you have to factor, where I think that I could be either one of those things. It's the route you want to take, because each route, there's a different way you have to go about it and different work ethic you have to do to be successful in that.
I'm just looking at the fact that the Nets got you for a 2021 second-round pick and Darrell Arthur. How much do which is, I would say, a steal for the Nets and what that's turned out. But how much, because I know players, any opportunity they have to talk ish about each other or to needle somebody, they will.
Yeah.
How much is there a back and forth on who got traded for what? Like, if you want to take somebody down, or like, you know what are you talking about, dude? You got traded for so and so and a future pick. Like, don't talk to me.
You know what? It's more so with the team, of not necessarily a player.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that, because I remember a couple of times. Obviously getting traded for them. Like, Phoenix didn't want me. We knew this. And I obviously wanted a situation where I could play and, obviously prolong my career. And they wanted to do a buyout. We didn't do a buyout. And they basically traded me for a player who wasn't going to be there. And so, which would make no sense, because now they're signing power forwards. They don't gain any money. The money was still going to come off the books regardless of how it was. And so, I just look at it like, why do that? Like, what is the point? The guy's not playing. He's a good locker room guy. And so I can see why I wouldn't want to do that, but why would they? And that's where you see these organizations that are badly run and stuff like that. When I was in with the Clippers, I got traded to Milwaukee, and they weren't going to do it, but then the Clippers added a first-round pick just to get rid of me.
Wow.
Because obviously I was hurt, and that's how it is. And I'm like, wow. And you see that was when Doc Rivers was the GM. Now it's Doc the coach. And you see why he's a coach, not a Hall of Fame coach, but not a Hall of Fame GM. You just see it. So the player's beef is more with the organization of trade, not really the player. Because I remember one trade it was me and JJ Redick to the Clippers for Eric Bledsoe. And Eric Bledsoe had a great year, and everyone was like, how can the Suns trade? Clippers just get Jared Dudley for Eric Bledsoe. It wasn't Eric Bledsoe. It was also J.J. Redick. It was a combination. They also took on Caron Butler. So, I really don't get into that way. It's more the organization for sure.
Yeah, and that's when it comes to GM head coaches, I've never in my life understood why I understand why they do it. It's because they think it's the only way they're going to get that particular coach. But there are such disparate jobs that, I'm sure you as a player, when you're playing for a guy who has all of the power, that you feel the difference than when you're playing for a guy who's the coach and there's a GM and there's a separation of church and state.
For sure, especially trade deadline. When I was at the Clippers with Doc Rivers, the trade deadline, we were on the plane. He's taking phone calls from the back, trading players before the deadline. Like, the unprofessionalism of that, for it to be right there, to have two, most times you'd be in your office at the facility, guys would be at their house, the trade deadline would go through, you make your phone calls, hey, sorry, you've been traded. But we have to travel to go. We had a road game at Memphis, so we have to travel still. And so we all have to still get ready. So instead of pushing back the flight 3 to 4 hours, you're in game mode, you're in coach mode, you're in GM mode, you're sitting there. It's something I never experienced. Like, how does that even happen? And that was his first time. And I think that if you ask him, he probably would say that's a mistake and do that more so, where I've also seen it where, hey, I'm just a coach. We're going to fly. Hey, the trading deadline ended while we were in the air. When we landed, someone got traded, had to fly back home. So, it can go either way. Yeah. So you can definitely feel the power. You definitely know that, hey, you're going to pick and choose your battles a different way for sure.
So the players that he was trading on the plane?
They were on the plane. The whole team was on the plane.
And could they hear?
Jameson got you couldn't hear, but that's when Twitter's right there. So he's only, you know how it is in playing. Yeah. The players sit in the front, Coaches are in the mid watching film, so it's only about 15 feet away.
Yeah.
So we can't really hear, and Twitter's going, Twitter, you're tweeting something, Woj tweeting something, or everyone's tweeting different stuff. Hey, Clippers are in contact with the Knicks, and so 3 people ended up getting traded at that time, different places, and so then we had to dock the plane right back in LAX. And they had to get off the plane, and then we flew to Memphis.
No. So you were you taxiing, or were you you weren't in the air?
We were on the runway. No, we were on the runway. Stopped.
Who got off?
Antoine Jameson. Remember Brian Mullins?
Yes.
His name Brian Mullins. He got traded to Philly. It was somebody else also. But Matt Barnes, Willie Green almost got traded to the Knicks.
Oh.
It was like stuff that went down, and at the last minute it fell through, and we're like over here like. And then I remember Reggie Bullock was on our team. He's like, man, this is crazy. I said, Reggie, this is unprofessional. This is not how the NBA works. I said, but sometimes you get it like this. So I'm gonna let young players know. It's not how it goes. You're sitting on the tarmac. You're getting ready to fly. I was like, no, he's just the president coach. He's trying to do this, and I bet you the next year I obviously got traded. He wouldn't do it like that. Back the plane up. Everyone go home. But yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it, man.
So to wrap up here, I'm just curious because you're 33, you're in good shape. You obviously demonstrated that, and I love this. Like, people don't understand how you're getting it done because you don't look like you're supposed to blow by anybody, and yet I've seen you go by guys and pick your spots, and I feel like you're setting them up during the course of the game. And, and I've seen veteran guys do this, going all the way back to, first time I can go back to Spurs Blazers when I was sitting there with Jack McCullum, and we were watching the game, and I said, oh, this game's about to turn. Spurs are about to get and sure enough, they were down 7, fourth quarter, halfway through the fourth quarter, and then they ratcheted it up. They knew where they needed to go and what they needed to do, and you could just see the start. And I saw the same thing with Derrick Rose at one point playing in Sacramento. Simple, he made a move in the first quarter. I went, okay, he knows he's got that anytime he wants it. We're not going to see it. We won't see it until the fourth quarter again. But he had it in his back pocket, and I feel as if that's probably one of the. I don't know if you learned it from Steve and Grant, but I've seen you do the same thing. Like, you kind of figure out some things, and I can tell you've got it in your back pocket, and then boom, fourth quarter, need a bucket, need a certain situation, you go right to it. Right,
for sure. I think that players are coming even younger. They're coming in 19. So already when I first came in, I was 4 years of college. I was 21, getting ready to turn 22. And so now they're coming in, and now the game's going fast. And so now there's more possessions. The 3-point, the analytic game, hey, let's run them off the line. So over my last 3-4 years is, hey, all right, Jared's a career 40. Hey, we want to run him off the line, make him put the ball down. So I was putting the ball down, trying to set it up, set people up, because even if I'm slower, you have to run me off. And so they're taught to run off to basically make him put it down. So now I know I'm always going to have that angle putting it down. And so what I try to do is the first quarter to shoot a couple threes. Even if you miss it, let's say I go 0 for 2, is now they still have to respect the running me off, because the coaching staff is telling them that too, going by the analytics. So now when you're going by, or now everyone's a big switch team now, you're throughout the first 2 quarters, you're handing it off to Joe Harris, handing off to Spencer, because they have to switch. You're setting up to fake the handoff to get an easy layup, a la what I did versus the Lakers. You do this. You're setting up flare screens. Hey, I'm going to set a flare for Joe Harris. He's number 1 in 3-point percentage. Flare. He hits a 3. Flare. Now I set the flare. Now I slip. I get a layup. So it's the game within the game. You learn that from Grant Hill, Steve Nash. You see how they're being played. Rookie, second, third year guys it's all about their tendencies of how they guard, when they're being lax, when to crash the rebound, when to take a charge, when that. And so, so a guy like myself, we can now play longer, because now against 70% of the league that's young. Now, it might be difficult when you play the Warriors and they know how to mismatch. You play Houston, they can put you in screening roles where maybe you're not as good as defensively you once were. But 70% of the year when you're playing against teams like Orlando and even Sacramento, who's improved, and these younger teams that, you can still be successful. I think I lead my team in plus minus. I'm 33. Like, how does someone like myself? We got 15 guys. It's because when I'm out there, it's not about averaging 6-7 points, or between 11 or 12. The points per game is dead. It's about your effective, your percentages, your plus minus, The hockey assists now, they got a stat of box outs, like box out percentage. I know I'm top 5. I box out I might not get the rebound, but I'm boxing out. It's the little things that keep me going.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll wrap on this because I'm really curious because you are great for guys like me in that you speak the truth and you're doing it as a player. And I just, but I also know that like teams can be hinky about a veteran player, not Sam Hinkie, but just a little uneasy about somebody who is outspoken like yourself, and they're like, I don't know if we want that, or that could be, I think they sometimes confuse what that does in the locker room, or how that affects, or what you are talking about. How have you? I mean, you're a thoughtful guy. I assume you still want to play, but you've been you for a while. Like, how do you handle that? The idea of I want to tell, I want to speak my piece. I want to be honest. I want to be truthful, but I would assume you're like, I don't want to negatively impact my career either.
Hey, that's a great question, and it is also too, as much as you do on the court, it's off the court through Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter, talking about different teams, talking about. So you're right. So I say first thing first is, when it comes to not only basketball and life, and I think you could attest this, your reputation is everything. Mm-hmm. So if someone doesn't know who Rick Bucher is, and they're an upcoming, journalist, and they ask you, hey, what do you think about Rick Bucher? And so I would tell them about my experiences. Oh, how he's called me, boom, boom, how he's asked you, how we've had different discussions, a good guy. Hey, if he wants to keep it private to not. And so when most teams, now I've been on 7-8 teams, my reputation is he is great, but in the locker room. Team first guy. Mm-hmm. Would rather the team to do well than himself to do well. Hey, willing to hang out with young guys, watch film with them on the plane. That's not in my contract. I don't have to watch film with D'Angelo Russell and Karis LeVert. Taking guys team dinners without even having coaches involved. You know how many organizations, teams that don't do that? Like every team I've been on, hey, listen, we're all going to dinner. Hey, bowling alley, we're all going bowling. Hey, I'm paying for it. On me, dinner's on me. We're going to Mastro's. Let's hang out. Hey, no one bring your phones. Let's talk. Teams love that. That is a leader. That is better leadership. So when they see that, they take the good with the bad. So then now let's talk about me being outspoken. So you can be outspoken and not put a player down. Like I just told you some problems, with maturity with D'Angelo before. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I also told you his strengths. And I also told you how he's gotten better and what he is. So I've always been in public speaking, you start with the bad, you end with the good. So it goes both ways. So it's how you are. No one wants a leader that's just always nice. You have to be, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a terrible shot. That's a terrible shot, and that's how it is. And the reason why my advice is not to gain for me as a player, is to gain the team and make you better. So when they hear stuff like that, and my only probably disputes that I've had is getting it on Twitter, or maybe with Enes Kanter or other players on the floor, is I'm sticking up for young guys. Hey, you went after Devin Booker? That's a franchise player. If what's that player from the Knicks that hard fouled Giannis? Remember, he stepped over him.
Mario Hezonja.
If that's my teammate and it's a franchise player, I'm taking a flagrant foul on Mario. I'm taking that fine. I'm taking a $5,000-$10,000. I'm putting him on his butt doing that. The reason why, that's the franchise player. I'm sticking up for him. So all my when I got into with Rubio, I thought they tried to hurt Marquise Chris, even though I was wrong in it. But my intention was I'm sticking up for my teammate. And every organization, every team wants a player that sticks up for his guys, who's loyal, who's a good teammate. So with that being said, I've never had any problems. The one time in free agency, I had Quinn Snyder come to mind when he came to my house at midnight. I was one comment I made in the newspaper one time, and I explained my reasons of why I made that and stuff like that. He's like, I'm just curious because in our organization, we like to keep stuff in-house. I said, that's no problem with me, coach. So we moved. That's the only time I've had someone kind of say something, but besides that, I've been pretty good.
Well, you were fantastic once again here. I appreciate you taking the time. Hope the hamstring. I got to tell you, man, speaking from experience, like I'd never had a hamstring before, and I'm older than you, but like I got to 40, and suddenly like I'm having my calves are. I've got a strained calf. I'm pulling a hammy. I was like, what the hell's going on here? It is.
Hey,
stay after the maintenance. That's all I can say.
The good thing about me, the hamstring hurt, hamstring healthy. My speed ain't going to change. It's going to be the same speed. Listen here, all right? So I'm going to be good either way when I get back.
Well said. Well said. All right, we'll leave it at that. Jared, wishing you and the Nets all the best of luck. Always a pleasure, and look forward to catching up with you again down the line.
Hey, man, appreciate it. Anytime.
So that's it for another episode of Bucher and Friends, part of the United WeCast Network. A couple other podcasts on the network you should check out. There's The Age Groupie by Lindsay Hyken. If you are a weekend warrior when it comes to endurance sports, you will want to check this out. We also have comedian actor Gary Owen with his special brand of humor, often joined by his wife Kenya, his dad, various celebrities. That is also not to be missed, the Get Some podcast. You can find all of that on the United WeCast Network, at iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the next Bucher and Friends, Ryan Hollins will join me, and we will talk about all-star selections. Who should be in, who shouldn't, and the teammates that Ryan has had in the past that he could tell were gunning for an all-star berth, both by the way they played before the all-star break and afterward. All that in our next podcast. In the meantime, thanks for listening.